Hello my goalers, it's Daniel here, and today I'll be running through some of the worst January transfer moves in history in the Premier League. There were so many I could have put on this list, many I had to leave out, high profile ones, some ones you guys may have forgotten. I've made a list of 6 for today's video to get into. Make sure in the comments below, give me your opinions on the worst January moves in Premier League history, the ones I did put on this list, maybe ones I've forgotten that you think should have been on this list. Let me know in the comments below. But let's get to my list of the worst January transfer moves by Premier League clubs in history. Number 1 is Fernando Torres from Liverpool to Chelsea in January 2011. One of the most high profile flops in Premier League history. I think I had to put this on this list. Even as a Chelsea fan, I could make the argument he scored some big goals for us in the Champions League and Europa League. But unfortunately, in the Premier League, was simply unable to replicate the form he showed at Liverpool. He was incredible at Liverpool. He really was one of the best strikers in Premier League history. At his best, I think you could compare him to the best of, say, Thierry Henry. He was that good. His pace, his speed, his movement, his finishing. He scored so many goals against Chelsea as well at his best for Liverpool too. I think there are varying factors for why this transfer didn't work out. I think number 1, he really struggled with injury. I think he had a big injury just before joining Chelsea at the time, and he never really regained that speed and movement, and maybe that hurt him psychologically as well. Number 2, I think moving to a big club like Chelsea and sort of the mentality of Chelsea compared to Liverpool at that time in terms of being title winners, having Didier Drogba, Nicolas Anelka, having a big squad that wants to win big titles, and was never really the main man at Chelsea and had to fight for his spot, which maybe hurt him as well. And I think number 3, a succession of bad misses. I mean, in terms of in front of goal, he had some bad misses. I think the one that sticks out in everyone's mind is when he rounded David De Gea in 2011 and missed an open goal basically, and really that hurt him psychologically. In the Premier League, he was unable to ever reach 20 goals in one season. Number 2 is Andy Carroll from Newcastle to Liverpool in the same year as Fernando Torres. On the same day Torres signed for Chelsea, Carroll signed for Liverpool. We think about the domino effect of transfers, and this is a prime example. And unfortunately for both Carroll and Torres, the similarities didn't stop there in terms of what actually happened when the transfers went through. Because Andy Carroll had a brilliant start to that Premier League season. He scored 11 in 19. He had a real purple patch. But unfortunately, Carroll was never at that level again. I think once again, like Torres, injuries, confidence, I think adapting to a new club. But personally, in my opinion, I think other than the injuries, which have really hurt Andy Carroll's career, when we look back at his career, not only at Liverpool, beyond that, he's had injury problems over and over again. He's broken down over and over again, which I think makes him a real hard player to sort of back in terms of trusting him week in, week out to be a main striker. And I think obviously for many players that can derail promising careers. But I just think in terms of the type of striker sort of Carroll is, I think compared to say Torres before him and even Luis Suarez, who they bought in the same window, in terms of that fast mobile striker, that's not the way Andy Carroll is as a striker. He's much more physical. He's getting the ball up to him. I think you have to play a very limited game to get the best out of Andy Carroll, and I think at a top club like Liverpool, that was always going to limit their game compared to what they have now. So I think Andy Carroll absolutely has to be on this list. Injury problems, confidence problems, not being at the best level to compete at the top of the Premier League, I think was an issue for Carroll too. He has to be on this list as well. Number 3 is a player I'm sure many of you forget, even Arsenal fans will forget this player, Kim Källström from Spartak Moscow to Arsenal on loan in January 2014. Now I think many people will forget Kim Källström played in the Premier League because he only made 3 appearances for the Gunners in the Premier League from January to May that year, but it really was a bad move, and I don't even think in hindsight I can sit here and call this a bad move, because apparently Arsenal signed Källström knowing he was injured, which I think summed up so many of the issues Arsenal had recruitment wise under Arsene Wenger at the time. Arsenal were in a serious title challenge for the first half of that 13-14 season. They're right up there with Man City, Chelsea and Liverpool, but needed a new striker to help Olivier Giroud, whose goals tailed off in the second half of the season. In midfield they had so many injuries to key players, and it was comical they signed a player who could only make 3 appearances for them for the rest of the season. It was just a really bad move all round, and luckily for them it was only a loan move. It wasn't a massive permanent fee, say like Carroll and Torres, but I have to put this on this list because for the expectation level Källström was going to bring to Arsenal for the rest of the season as a defensive midfielder, which is what they really needed at the time under Arsene Wenger, it was a failure of a move. It is one of the worst moves in Premier League history, and especially in the January window, it has to be number 3 on this list for me. Number 4 is Alexis Sanchez from Arsenal to Man United in January 2018. 2018. You all remember that famous piano announcement video? It all feels a little bit comical now given how badly the transfer turned out. But at the time, it was a marquee signing in the January window. Henrik Mkhitaryan, who'd struggled at Man United, went the other way to Arsenal. He struggled too and could have been on this list as well. But I think Sanchez, given how good he was at Arsenal, the standards, the high standards, I mean, I think it's easy to forget because he struggled at Man United and sort of faded into obscurity when he was there. It's easy to forget how good he was in the Premier League for Arsenal. He was one of the most inspirational figures on the pitch in terms of his goals, in terms of what he could do creatively. He was really an electric player at his best, and you felt going to Man United with the likes of Paul Pogba, Marcus Rashford and others, he could really help that team and elevate them to the next level, because Pep Guardiola as well was in for Man City, but unfortunately when he arrived at Man United it became pretty clear that he was not going to fit in for a number of reasons. I do wonder what Man United wanted from Alexis Sanchez in their team. It felt like a sense that Jose Mourinho wasn't quite sure how he was going to use Alexis Sanchez in terms of his influence on the pitch for Arsenal compared to Man United. Was he the best fit, or was it just a shiny new toy for him to bring in and he didn't really know how to fit him into his system? I think that's a big problem as well. And then on the Alexis Sanchez side, I think there is this belief that he was maybe a little bit tired by then, you know, exhaustion, not only from playing club football for Arsenal but also international football. And given a player like Alexis Sanchez who needs that explosive energy, you know, at his best he tears around the pitch, he's non-stop action, and that was maybe a key issue for him when he arrived at Man United, maintaining those high levels he'd set at Arsenal. And probably Arsenal had got the best years of Alexis Sanchez in the Premier League. So all round this has to be on this list. Eventually, after barely getting any football under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who replaced Jose Mourinho at the end of 2018, he went on loan to Inter Milan, and if he doesn't have that infectious energy in his game, it's really going to show. So he was unable to maintain the levels we saw at Arsenal in the Premier League compared to when he played for Man United. He faded into obscurity, eventually loaned out to Inter Milan where he is now. He's never really reached the same levels there either, so maybe it was just the case that he had a great purple patch at Arsenal between 2014 and 2018, but once he reached Old Trafford was unable to replicate that. Number 5 is Diego Forlan from Independiente to Man United in 2002. Now I know some Man United fans do treat Diego Forlan like a bit of a cult hero, and it's understandable. You look through his career, you see some of the goals he scored, especially at Anfield against Liverpool, a big goal for any Man United player to score no matter what they do in their career. He scored some brilliant winners against Southampton and Chelsea, but unfortunately I think he has to be on this list because of the expectation when he arrived in England. He actually originally arrived in England and flew to England to sign for Middlesbrough, but Man United got in there, Sir Alex got in there and signed him ahead of Middlesbrough at the time. And I think that there were several issues once again for this player in terms of adaptation. He was a young player, 22 years old, and really he struggled to get into the first team regularly. He was more of a sub player, which for some players like Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Man United really works well, but for others they really struggled to adapt. And I think that was a problem for Forlan, not being a guaranteed starter, having to compete with Ruud van Nistelrooy and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as the main striker. I think he really struggled to adapt, and also the expectation level as a young player coming into the pressure, the intense scrutiny of a title chasing Man United, and that's why he struggled to adapt. It took him 26 games to score his first goal, and even that wasn't in the Premier League. It was a penalty in the Champions League the following season. And really Diego Forlan, it was just a case once again of a young player adapting, coming into a league with high pressure and high scrutiny. And 17 goals in 98 appearances for a striker I don't think is that good. Sure, it's not to the same level as Fernando Torres or Andy Carroll given how much he was worth, 7.5 million in a transfer fee, but still for Man United what they require in their centre forward, it really was a bad signing and it didn't work out. It was very underwhelming, and that's for me in terms of January signings why it has to be on this list. But as I say, some Man United fans do think of him as a cult hero. Man United fans watching this, let me know down in the comments, what do you think of Diego Forlan? Was he a flop or not? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6 is Juan Cuadrado from Fiorentina to Chelsea in January 2015. I know a lot of you guys may have actually forgotten that Cuadrado once played for Chelsea. He did for a very short period of time and just never made an impact. I remember Cuadrado when he arrived at Chelsea. I was actually there for his debut at Aston Villa in the Premier League when Chelsea won 2-1, and there was a lot of expectation for Cuadrado and at least a lot of excitement that this guy could have an impact in the Premier League for Chelsea. A young winger, we'd seen him flourish for Colombia at the World Cup the previous year with James Rodriguez. There was sense he could bring that flair, be a hidden gem and really improve this team. The unfortunate thing for Cuadrado is, and I think a lot of players in my list sort of fall into this category, the issue of joining halfway through a season. Chelsea were going all out for the Premier League title that season and Cuadrado had to fight with Willian to get a spot in the first team. The Brazilian was very much a trusted member of Jose Mourinho's first team and it was really hard to get in front of him. And I think the issue with Cuadrado was just never really had that impact, but to be fair, never was really given the opportunity by Jose Mourinho to have an impact to begin with. And unfortunately with Willian, with Eden Hazard on the other wing doing so well too, it was always going to be a challenge for him to improve and sort of increase his chances at Stamford Bridge under Jose Mourinho, and was eventually shipped off on loan to Juventus the following summer where he never returned. I think this has to be on this list. Not the sense that this player got amazing opportunities, he really didn't, and unfortunately in Jose Mourinho's second tenure at Stamford Bridge that was the case with players like Kevin De Bruyne and Mohamed Salah as well. But unfortunately for Juan Cuadrado, in terms of an impact of a signing, in terms of the expectation level, in terms of barely having any impact and then actually leaving the club on loan 6 months later, this was a disastrous move for Cuadrado and for Chelsea, and for me it has to be on this list. So that is it, my list of the 6 worst January moves by Premier League clubs in history. Let me know your thoughts on the video, the list. Give me your list in the comments below. Get involved in the comments. Make sure you hit that like button too, and subscribe to Own My Goal so you don't miss any of the videos upcoming about the Premier League.